When we think about flood insurance, we may think about expensive beachfront homes and maybe even think they don't belong there in the first place. But we're talking about 22,000 communities across the country, and many people may not even realize they need flood insurance, and even more who could never afford the price because they keep going up, and some of them are going way up. So we've got you covered on all of this to sort it all out, to kind of help you decide whether you do need to have this or not with our lifestyle expert, Shari. Thanks for joining us this morning. You know, I was under the impression quarter century ago when I moved to Florida, if I bought a house that wasn't in a flood zone, I didn't need flood insurance.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. Well, here's the thing. Most folks who have a mortgage and are in a high-risk flood zone, because we're all in different types of zones, will be required by their lender to have flood insurance. So it's a non-issue for them. The folks that we're worried about who run into problems are those who either don't have a mortgage or are living in an area that has not traditionally been a high-risk area, because we know that now that about a quarter of the damage that's occurring from flooding is actually occurring in areas that are not traditionally high-risk flood areas. So places like Texas or Kentucky or Ohio or Wisconsin, or even today, 40 million people are at risk of flash flooding in Iowa. Those are the folks we want to make sure are aware that they may need flood insurance coverage, even though they didn't 10 years ago.
Well, what I find, too, that's interesting, though, we'll get a lot of stories about people get flood insurance, and then they have an argument with their insurance company who says,
always,
you know, the flood insurance people say, no, it's your windstorm insurance from if it's a hurricane, or that company says, no, it's your flood insurance that needs to cover it. So what exactly does all this cover?
So a lot of folks don't realize that all water damage to your home is not alike. So if water damage occurs, for example, as a result of a roof leak, that's going to be covered by your regular homeowner's policy. But water damage that occurs as a result of rising external waters has to be covered by flood insurance. Your other insurance won't cover it. A lot of folks don't realize that. And most of those policies are coming from the National Flood Insurance Program, which was established by the government specifically for that reason. Those policies will cover you for up to $250,000 damage to your home, $100,000 damage to the contents, and fortunately the average premiums on those policies has been as low as under $1,000.
Yeah, I've found that it's relatively cheap insurance. I mean, to have this, but exactly what's going on in Washington now, because we just mentioned a few minutes ago, if you're thinking of getting it or you have it, you might be surprised at some of the price hikes. Right,
and that's the kind of bad story about the insurance being so cheap. So right now in Washington, Congress is looking at reauthorizing the National Flood Insurance Program, which is something they have to do every few years. And we as homeowners need to be aware of that, because if for some reason they don't reauthorize it, that could stall real estate sales about 40,000 a month across the country in about 22,000 communities. There are other things, too, that Congress is looking at right now that's going to impact people across the country who need flood insurance or want to buy flood insurance, including ways to more accurately allocate the risk using new technologies like LIDAR ratings, also ways to raise elevations, different techniques that Congress is basically considering in order to keep the premiums more fairly distributed and more accurately assess the risk.
There's a lot that goes into this. You really need to do your research and homework for this.
Right, but the bottom line is we need to have a flood insurance program in this country, and anyone who's a homeowner needs to really be looking at this. Even though they may not have thought that they were at risk in the past, they may be now.
All right, well, let that be the last word. Thanks, Shari, always for the good advice. All right, let's send things over to Felicia with some serious temperatures we've got to keep in mind today.